1912 presidential campaign was about flavors of progressivism. Everybody was calling themselves a progressive by now, even Taft. But it was, what did you mean by progressivism? As we already know, the Republican Party had split over Teddy Roosevelt's third-party run on the Bull Moose, or the Progressive Party, and William Howard Taft's nomination as the official Republican nominee. The Democrats will turn, in their own convention, at first to conservative Democrat Champ Clark, who's the Speaker of the House, but he's unable to get the nomination. He can't get the votes for it. Progressives block him, arguing he's not progressive enough. They eventually compromise on Woodrow Wilson. It takes 46 ballots. They vote 46 times before they get to him. He's a political science professor at Princeton University. He's from South Carolina originally. He had been elected New Jersey governor in 1910, and he had reformed New Jersey. He was a progressive in the sense that he had gone in and fought corruption in his state. He runs on a program he calls the New Freedom. It's very similar to Roosevelt's New Nationalism. And it basically is anti-bigness, break up the monopolies, break up the big corporations. Taft doesn't campaign at all because Taft knows he's going to lose. Roosevelt campaigns with incredible energy until he is shot just a few weeks before the election. He survives the assassination, but it does prevent him from campaigning any further. So by the end, Wilson is the only one out on the road campaigning. And you see here that Wilson wins. He wins quite easily. You'll notice there's green on the map. There's normally not green. That's a third-party candidate, and that's Roosevelt. You can see that Roosevelt actually gets both more electoral votes and more overall votes than William Howard Taft. And I believe this is the only time in our history that a third-party candidate beat one of the major parties. And that's going to be Teddy Roosevelt, so that kind of makes sense. This Republican split between Roosevelt and Taft will allow Woodrow Wilson to win. If you notice, the two Republican candidates combined got more than Wilson, but it's worth pointing out many Democrats voted for Roosevelt as well. If he would not have been in the picture, it's unclear who would have won. Wilson was bold and forceful. He only gave powers to people he believed to be totally loyal to him. While he was president, the Democrats controlled both houses of Congress, so he was able to do pretty much what he wanted. The Underwood-Simmons tariff dramatically cuts tariffs. Remember, Republicans wanted high tariffs. Democrats wanted low, so that should be no surprise. And opens competition with foreign corporations to do business in America. This, he argues, will destroy American monopolies, and there's actually some truth to that. Under Wilson, we'll get the 16th Amendment passed, which allows a income tax to replace to become the main source of revenue. In the beginning, it was very, very mild. The poorest people in America paid 1%. The wealthiest paid 6%. Now it ranges from the mid-20s to the high 30s. So it's changed a lot over the years. In 1913, maybe the most important thing Wilson will do is he'll push through the Federal Reserve Act. This creates 12 regional banks that are owned and run not by the government, but by the banks in that area. This is called the Federal Reserve System. It takes a percentage of the members' bank's money and loans it out to the other banks at what we call a discount rate. These banks also actually print the paper money, although that's technically done by the federal government. They control how much will be printed. It's supposed to create a liquid money supply and provide relief to the troubled banks. The Federal Reserve Board is composed of people who run these member banks, but also a chairman appointed by the president. Congress also passes, creates a Federal Trade Commission whose job is to pre-approve corporate mergers and decide if two corporations joining together become one will create a monopoly or not. They also will investigate and prosecute unfair trade practices out there in the business world. There was actually a stronger alternative, the Clayton Antitrust Bill, but Wilson didn't support that. The Federal Trade Commission was actually the milder of the two proposals. By 1914, Wilson feels the progressive agenda has been achieved. That's 2 years after he becomes president. And he rejects further moves in the progressive direction. He has no interest in expanding women's rights, dealing with race issues. In fact, it turns out Wilson was kind of racist himself. He actually removed some of the anti-segregation measures taken by Teddy Roosevelt. And the Southern Democrats like him very much. Remember, the South is solidly Democrat. And remember, Woodrow Wilson is from South Carolina. By 1914, Teddy Roosevelt's Republicans have returned home to the Republican Party, and in the congressional elections of 1914, the Republican Party does very, very, very well. Wilson panics and decides to become a progressive again. He doesn't move to the right towards the victorious Republicans. He moves to the left, trying to energize his Democratic base. He appoints the first Jew to the United States Supreme Court, Louis Brandeis. He eases credit for farmers because he knows that a lot of his supporters are farmers. He pushes through requirements for workers' compensation for workers who are injured on the job. The Keating-Owen Act outlaws goods that are produced with child labor from crossing state lines. The courts actually strike this down, regulating that it's too much intervention in business. And so Congress responds by simply putting a big tax on the same goods, which the courts also strike down. And so child labor continues in America. But Wilson and the Democrats are fighting it. The Smith-Lever Act uses federal money to provide education for farmers. And finally, and this is the further increase. It begins really with the Civil War, but the further growth of government. But now government is being used as a friend of the people to help the poor, to fight the corporations. And this is ultimately the primary impulse of progressivism.